of the gods put speech into her, and he called this woman Pandora. But the woman took off the great lid of the jar with her hands and scattered all these, and her thoughts caused sorrow and mischief to men. For earth is full of evil.
What will cinema look like? What should cinema look like?
As to what happened, I said that you had brought an idea to somebody and that you saw the idea on television.
You'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
Copyright is not a new concept. The exclusive legal right to reproduce and control an original literary, musical, or artistic work. First envisioned as the Copyright Act during the 18th century in the United States, its basis came from the Statute of Anne in 1710, which, in turn, was built upon the Licensing of the Press Act, 1662. Needless to say, copyright has grown through various forms for hundreds of years. A copyright itself gives the creator or licensee of a work the legal protection when it comes to its distribution, adaptation, and presentation. It is a form of intellectual property, and it's designed to protect the original expression of an idea. And legally, it's a successful practice. Material owners can maintain the integrity of their work without fear of derivative theft, and they have the protection of their legal system if infringement is found. Although linked, however, copyright does distinguish itself from plagiarism. Plagiarism is not bound by a legal framework. It's a moralistic position, found in professional and academic settings, that aims to prevent a party from attempting to pass someone else's work off as their own. It is an ethical violation, not a lawfully protected transgression, designed to maintain scholarly authenticity.
Exactly what that's going to look like, I'm not sure. Clearly there's some cut and dry stuff, like you can't copy someone else's work. But how much inspiration can you take?
More on AI.
AI. Right now, we can't escape those two letters.
Artificial intelligence.
You see it. I mean, is it a benefit or is it a real threat?
They're everywhere. But what are all these companies and headlines specifically referring to?
Anyone who's been paying attention has been seeing headlines like this.
And how do the models themselves work? What actually is artificial intelligence?
We can't tell.
You're delivering an illusion.
All in a matter of minutes.
What was made by a person
It allowed people to create and express themselves in a new way.
and what was made by a machine.
What data was used to train Sora?
Artificial intelligence is the name of an area of computational study that first emerged in an academic setting in the 1950s. The research details methods and software that enable machines to perceive their environment and use learning and intelligence to take actions that maximize their chances of achieving defined goals. Projects like A-Star and Deep Blue, that's developed out of this zone of study, are distinct from modern interpretations of the subject, as they are algorithmically driven but reliant on a single phase evaluation step and no subsequent corrective learning. Under this umbrella of AI, we find a subset designated machine learning, and within that, deep learning. These are the names given to disciplines surrounding the development of statistical algorithms, and within deep learning specifically, the performance-enhancing neural networks that generative AI variants rely on. These Gen AI models are the ones we are all typically familiar with. OpenAI's ChatGPT is a large language model, itself a form of generative AI. The GPT in its name, an acronym of Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Simply put, drawing first on generic and then specific layers of data, the transformer neural network embedded in the program predicts text based on that dataset's typical sequence. Among others, OpenAI, the product's non-profit developer, has a whole series of neural network-based generative platforms, including text-to-image and text-to-video services, all running on distinct variations of similar processes. The most recent text-to-image and video models being based on a construct known as diffusion. Gaussian noise is added evenly across an image over many iterations, and a neural network is trained to conditionally denoise the previous output. This reversal, combined with a text-based prompt, results in the generated image. But why do we need to know all of this? Well, it helps to understand which specific areas of AI we're talking about when we look at the possibilities and current use cases of this technology, especially as it's already being applied in the film industry today.
Well, if you can't tell, does it matter?
Most forms of traditional media have three main stages of development: pre-production, production, and post-production. Among others, services like Scriptbook and ChatGPT often tout their text-based capabilities as a useful scripting assistant during the initial stages of screenplay creation. I've also worked with colleagues who've used images generated by their prompts in Midjourney and DALL-E when storyboarding short films and commercials. Sony Pictures and Lionsgate have also partnered with Synalytic, an AI-driven data analytics firm that uses machine learning to determine a film's box office potential. But the two areas that will continue to be affected by this technology the most are production and post-production. Generative AI models like Sora, Runway, and more recently VO3, through various diffusion-based models, aim to create photorealistic motion imagery and visual effects based on text, photo, or pre-existing video prompts to varying degrees of success. This goes hand in hand with deepfake technology's use in VFX.
It's really crazy. A lot of AI they did with this little actor, right?
Industrial Light and Magic has started using facial and voice replacement generative techniques to digitally de-age actors in live-action films and TV.
But the rest, countless plagues wander amongst men.
Plagiarism is a nebulous concept. Most lawsuits surrounding the subject almost exclusively appear in an academic environment and have a pre-existing basis in copyrighted material. It is the reputational damage that helps enforce the idea. Non-copyrighted material can be plagiarized, but attribution is not permission. Without an express transferal of rights, the usage of copyrighted content is illegal unless deemed fair use. In US copyright law, the doctrine that excerpts of copyrighted material may, under certain circumstances, be quoted verbatim for purposes such as criticism, news reporting, teaching, and research, without the need for permission from or payment to the copyright holder. March 14th, 2025. Non-profit OpenAI and Google, with its leading position in the global digital advertising market, have lobbied for the US government to apply blanket fair use protections to their AI service development. OpenAI's Sora is already raising concerns within the UK government. Crossbench House of Lords peer and film director Viban Kidron stressed the importance of this debate after government proposals would let AI firms use copyrighted work to train their models unless creative professionals opt out of the process. Both companies argue that copyright, privacy, and patent policies impede appropriate access to data necessary for training leading models. They cite national security as their primary motive, but this position is nothing new. Microsoft and OpenAI got into hot water at the end of 2023 with the New York Times for allegedly copying millions of articles to train the language models that power Copilot and ChatGPT. Apple, Anthropic, and Nvidia scraped 170,000 YouTube videos for use as a part of a massive dataset to train AI systems based on subtitling and video transcripts.
OpenAI had trained its video generation product Sora on YouTube.
We have terms and conditions, right? And we would expect people to abide by those.
So you felt like they had broken your terms and conditions, or potentially, or if they had, that wouldn't have been appropriate.
That's right, yes.
What data was used to train Sora?
We used publicly available data.
Videos on YouTube?
I'm actually not sure about that.
A group of digital artists frequently referenced by users in their prompts on image generator Midjourney filed a class action lawsuit against the company after its Leon 5B dataset was found to be using their copyrighted material.
Disney and NBC Universal are filing a joint suit against AI company Midjourney, alleging copyright infringement.
Author Sarah Silverman filed a lawsuit against Meta after an investigation concluded Zuckerberg's Llama project illegally pirated copies of her work, bypassing any form of purchase. Disney was caught using AI background actors on their streaming platform in 2023 after already dealing with a high-profile scandal for digitally replicating supporting artists for use in other unrelated projects without any further compensation.
The AMPTP is focused on making a lot of money. Their attempts to instill instill AI as a normal operating procedure is literally dehumanizing the workforce.
The list goes on and on. If they're willing to do this without fair use, what will happen when they don't need permission at all? Simulation 1. Unrestricted Generative AI. Last month, Google released an Aronofsky-produced short film titled Ancestra that detailed the complications faced and overcome at birth by director Eliza McNitt. While a few shots were filmed using a practical cinema camera in a studio, much of the content was artificially generated. Visuals of a held infant, the birth of a foal, the clashing of the elements, none of which, they said, were captured. But their basis must have been an ironically pointless, lazy advertisement for a company flaunting its disdain for the very copyright protections that the story of the miracle of an individual's birth would seek to represent. In this simulation, we continue down this path. Any piece of film or video is available for data scraping. All pre-existing pieces of visual work, including films, TV shows, and online content, will be compiled from web archives and fed through deep learning algorithms and stored as layers of information for later use through subsequent versions of Stable Diffusion models. Now, in Google and OpenAI's defense, this is seemingly their cheapest option. They wouldn't have to pay royalties, after all. Countless volumes of data for all manner of creative endeavors exist online. It is the ultimate repository to draw on more data than the world has ever known, and we know less regulated international competitors won't have to deal with the copyright red tape. Both parties possess the luxury of lobbying the US government while pressuring others, and therefore know they have a high success rate in actually achieving this. The result would be a world devoid of new art for fear of its continual co-optation. Not preventing plagiarism will ultimately stop the free exchange of new ideas. Simulation 2. Artists are compensated. Filmmakers are artists, and cinema is a copyright-protected medium. While social standing and stigma may validate creative plagiarism claims, the law would see it differently. The line between copying and inspiration is never obvious, and has since been brought to the forefront of discussion. But the concept of transformative fair use, many argue, does not exist here. The seemingly disposable workforce that generative content so deeply relies on deserves better than to have its art stolen under the guise of a vague promise of progress. Alphabet, Google's parent company, is worth $2.11 trillion, and OpenAI an estimated $300 billion. They can afford to compensate and credit those that they do and will continue to rely on. A successful copyright system is the protection cinema, and by extension all art forms, need. Despite all that's been mentioned here, I do believe artificial intelligence has a place in many creative endeavors. We cannot be blind to the connection between technological evolution and the development of cinema. In its various forms, it exhibits itself as a powerful tool that aids in achieving complex goals.
AI for this world of generative video, it's not going to replace human beings making films. It's going to do key things more. And I think knowing when to stop is going to be a very difficult thing. Art is knowing when to stop.
Photography can assume no higher ranking than engraving, was the sentiment commonly expressed in the 19th century. Yet, it was always the case that there are photographers who can make chemically faultless photographs, yet fewer still who could make pictures. And a picture says 1,000 words, no AI prompt could ever fill. AI must be managed to human needs, not humans to an AI's. Hope was, after all, still left in the box.
Today, Republican Senator Josh Hawley and Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal introduced a bill that would restrict AI companies from using copyrighted material to train their models.